My name is Melissa Harrow, and I used to believe that family would never turn on you in public. That illusion shattered the day my sister Vanessa laughed as her husband fired me in front of my entire team. But she didn't laugh in court months later, when I handed the judge the email where Eric bragged about sabotaging my father's brakes. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I want to know how far this story reaches. Let me tell you how it all began. It was a Thursday. Austin heat outside, corporate air conditioning inside. The kind that hums constantly but never quite chills the sweat on the back of your neck when you're under pressure. I was reviewing a campaign pitch with the creative team, just tightening some headlines, rearranging asset deadlines, when I heard the elevator ding. Eric never came to our floor unannounced, and certainly not with Vanessa. The entire bullpen turned at the sound of their heels clicking across the polished concrete. My sister Vanessa, in a silk green blouse that looked expensive and smugness stitched into every step. Her husband, Eric Caldwell, the CEO of our firm and her shortcut to power, walked just behind her, face unreadable but eyes scanning like he was already rewriting my future. "Melissa," Eric called, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. "Can I have a word, right here?" The room went silent. I stood slowly, still holding a red Sharpie in my hand. "Sure," I said, trying not to let the confusion show. "Is everything okay?" Vanessa smirked. "Oh, better than okay." Eric didn't waste time. "As of this morning, your position is terminated. HR will send the formal paperwork, but your credentials have already been revoked. Please collect your things." I blinked. What? It wasn't even confusion. It was a kind of cold clarity that comes when your brain refuses to process what your ears just heard. "You're firing me?" I asked, trying to make eye contact, trying to believe there was some misunderstanding. "Eric, what are you talking about?" "I'm being extremely clear," he said, hands clasped. "Your performance has been inconsistent, your attitude has been questioned, and after reviewing departmental needs, your role is no longer essential." I could feel every eye on me. From Kelly in design to Mateo in analytics, no one moved. No one breathed. My heart pounded. "This isn't a performance issue. You just gave me a raise in February. We hit all quarterly targets." Vanessa tilted her head, clearly enjoying every second of it. "Oh, Melissa, sweet, clueless Melissa, maybe now you'll stop acting like you're better than me." It landed like a slap. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it, like this had been coming, like it had been planned. "I don't understand," I said, my voice suddenly thin. "This isn't personal, is it?" "Oh, everything is personal," she said, with a laugh that cut me to the bone. "Enjoy being poor." I stood there frozen. I didn't move, didn't cry, not yet. The kind of humiliation that burns cold instead of hot, sinking into your skin while your dignity tries to crawl away unnoticed. No one said a word, not even my assistant Sarah, who looked like she wanted to cry on my behalf. No one defended me. No one even stood up. I forced myself to walk to my desk. One step, another. I picked up my coffee mug. World's best campaign manager. The irony nearly broke me. I tossed it in the box with my headphones, notepad, photos of my dog Marley, and the only shred of pride I could still hold, my silence. I walked to the elevator without looking back. Vanessa leaned against the reception desk, arms crossed, that wicked grin still on her face. I stared at the doors as they closed in front of her. And in that moment, trapped between floors, the box in my arms shaking, I wasn't angry yet. I was just broken. But something inside me, quiet, cold, and ancient, whispered, "They don't get the last word." I just didn't know yet how deep the betrayal ran. It was nearly 9 p.m. when I pulled up to the old house in Round Rock. The porch light was still broken, flickering like a dying heartbeat over the chipped steps I had tripped over 100 times as a kid. My palms were still shaking from what happened at work, the box of office belongings sliding awkwardly across the passenger seat with every turn. I had nowhere else to go. Not yet. And in that moment, I needed someone to say it wasn't fair. That it was cruel. That I wasn't crazy. The living room smelled like lemon wood polish and old upholstery. My mom, Celeste, was folding laundry on the couch, a true crime show murmuring in the background. Dad was in his usual recliner, reading the news on his tablet, glasses slipping halfway down his nose. "Hey," I said, trying not to sound as broken as I felt. "Can we talk?" My mom didn't look up. "You're late, we were going to eat without you." I didn't bother explaining that I'd barely made it out of the parking garage before crying so hard I couldn't drive. I lost my job," I said finally. Now she looked up, so did my dad. What do you mean? He asked. I was fired, today. At work, Eric called everyone together and just terminated me, right there in the office. I swallowed hard. Vanessa was with him. Vanessa, my mom repeated, a crease forming between her brows. Why would she be involved? I don't know, I said. But she was standing next to him, smirking like it was some kind of show. She even said, enjoy being poor. My mother's face didn't change. No shock, no indignation, just tired eyes and a slight shake of her head. Melissa, she sighed, folding another towel, you've always been dramatic. My breath caught. Mom, I'm not exaggerating, it was humiliating, the entire floor saw it. Maybe you should reflect on why that happened, Dad added, scratching his temple. Eric doesn't seem like the type to do something rash, you must have done something wrong. I stared at him. Dad, I've worked there for 7 years. My last evaluation was flawless. I built the company's highest-grossing campaign last quarter. Well, he said, shifting in his chair, maybe that's why Eric had to make a tough call. Office politics can be tricky. He's the CEO, he sees the bigger picture. My mouth went dry. You're taking his side. We're not taking sides, Mom said coolly. But your sister has always worked harder than you give her credit for. I blinked. She didn't even work at the company until Eric hired her last year. I trained her. She still asks me how to export a PDF. She's had to work twice as hard to step out of your shadow, Mom replied. You've always been the golden child, Melissa. Maybe now she's finally getting what she deserves. I almost laughed, but it came out as a choked sound instead. I came here because I thought you'd care, I said softly. Because I thought maybe, after everything I've done, after everything I've worked for, you'd believe me. We do care, Dad said, but the words were mechanical. You just need to be accountable. It's not always someone else's fault. That was the moment something inside me cracked, not like breaking glass, but like the quiet shift of tectonic plates far beneath the surface. No screaming, no throwing things, just a slow, undeniable truth. I was alone. I sat down on the edge of the couch, still holding my purse in my lap. The laundry basket between us felt like a wall. You know, I said quietly, when Vanessa failed out of college, I was the one who found her a job. When she cried after her first breakup, I was the one who stayed up all night with her. When she needed a referral, I wrote it. And when she married Eric, I showed up, even though he treated me like I was disposable from day one. My mother stiffened. This sounds a lot like jealousy. I nodded slowly. Maybe, or maybe I'm finally seeing things clearly. The show on TV played on, the murder mystery plotline unfolding in the background. I could barely hear it over the rush of blood in my ears. You can stay here tonight, Dad offered. But don't bring this drama into our home tomorrow, okay? I nodded numb. I sat on that couch long after they went to bed. My box of things sat unopened at my feet, a little grave of the life I'd built and lost in a single afternoon. But as I stared at the blank television screen, my reflection flickering faintly back at me, I realized something. They would never back me. They never had. I wasn't going to find justice here. But maybe. I could build it myself. I didn't know how, or where to begin. But the silence in that house told me something loud and clear. This wasn't the end of my story. It was just the part where I stopped asking for permission. The job posting had only been up for 5 hours. I saw it late at night, scrolling through listings with sore eyes and a bruised ego. A small tech startup in East Austin, looking for an operations lead, someone to bring order to the brilliance, their listing said. It was bold. Slightly chaotic, and somehow honest. I applied with no expectations. And yet 3 days later I was sitting in a sunlit corner office that smelled like fresh coffee and dry erase markers, listening to the founder explain their company culture while a cat wandered across his desk. Her name's Ada, he said, gently moving the feline off his keyboard. After Lovelace, she's technically head of emotional support. Are you allergic? I blinked. Not at all, he smiled. Good, you'll fit right in. His name was Jonah Wilda, barely 30, wearing a hoodie that said Beta Forever and glasses that slid down his nose every few seconds. He spoke fast and thought faster. The company Flickerbyte was developing productivity tools for creative teams, and it was already buzzing with messy genius. You'll have to make sense of the chaos, he said during my second interview. The last ops manager tried to turn us into a bank, didn't last. I'm not here to kill the culture, I replied. Just to protect it from imploding. That earned a surprised laugh. I got the offer that evening. The first week was dizzying. Small team, big ideas, no infrastructure, developers who scribbled flowcharts on napkins, designers who forgot what time it was, a CFO who also doubled as HR and sometimes the office handyman, but no politics, no smug glances, no veiled threats. They didn't care where I came from, just what I could do. I'd barely been there 10 days when I overheard one of the engineers whisper to another in the break room, "Finally, someone who actually knows what a workflow is." It was a compliment, even if half-accidental. I started building systems, internal checklists, client dashboards, onboarding procedures. Nothing flashy, just structure. Things people could rely on. It grounded me, too. One late Thursday, I was the last to leave, except for Lacey, a 21-year-old intern with a sharp brain and a louder laugh. She was putting together slides for a beta demo and grumbling at her laptop. "You look like you're one spreadsheet crash away from a meltdown," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "I am," she groaned, dramatically slumping over her keyboard. "But thank you for noticing." I walked in and pulled up a chair beside her. "Show me, let's fix it." We talked for an hour. Not just about the slides, but about her coursework, her hopes to be hired full-time, and how nervous she was that she wasn't tech enough for a tech startup. "You're more than tech enough," I said. "You're human enough, that's rarer." Lacey looked at me startled, then she grinned. "Finally, a boss who actually listens." I don't know why, but that one sentence hit me right in the chest. I hadn't smiled, really smiled, since the day I was fired. But that night, walking to my car under the soft hum of string lights from the nearby taco truck, I realized something simple and enormous. This place didn't remind me of my old office. It reminded me of the person I used to be. No backstabbing, no whispered rivalries, no need to constantly prove I wasn't some fraud who only got her job because her sister's husband ran the company. Here, I was just Melissa, operations lead. The woman who brought structure to chaos and cared about the interns. And that, for now, was enough. It was after 8 p.m., and the office was dim except for the desk lamp glowing over my keyboard. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. I was finishing a quarterly operations report, double-checking a vendor discrepancy that didn't sit right. The snack drawer was empty. My water bottle had gone lukewarm. I stood to stretch and leaned down to retrieve an old folder I'd stashed in the bottom drawer of our supply cabinet. That's when it happened. The metal edge of the drawer bit into the soft skin between my thumb and forefinger. Deep, sharp, sudden. I cursed it under my breath, stumbling back as blood pooled in my palm. It dripped across the white tile in small, horrible drops. The startup had a basic first aid kit, but one look at the gash told me I needed more than a bandage. I wrapped my hand in paper towels and headed to the ER, mildly annoyed that my Friday night had ended in antiseptic lighting and vending machine granola bars. The waiting room at St. Luke's wasn't crowded. Within half an hour I was ushered back, sat under cold fluorescent lights and handed a clipboard. I was still scrolling through Slack updates when the doctor came in. "Melissa Harrow?" he asked, glancing at the chart. I nodded, flexing my fingers gently. "Small cut. Just want to make sure I don't need stitches." He glanced down at the blood-soaked towel, then back at me. "We'll take care of it, but first can I ask something?" His tone was different, careful, measuring. "Sure," I said slowly. He hesitated, flipping the chart toward himself, then back. "We ran a standard panel, nothing major, just part of protocol here. Your blood type came up as O negative, which is rare." I blinked. "Okay. Not unheard of," he continued. "But well, there's a second marker. Something that doesn't match standard maternal inheritance." "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, "that based on the alleles we tested, your reported parents may not be biologically related to you." The words settled in the room like thick smoke. I don't understand," I said, sitting up straighter. "What are you talking about?" He moved cautiously, like he wasn't sure how much to say. "This happens sometimes. People are adopted and never told, or there was a switch in a hospital. But in your case, your blood shows a marker consistent with another patient in our system. Someone flagged on a closed case. I need to double-check something with pathology, but I strongly recommend a DNA test, as soon as possible." "Wait," I said, my voice dropping. "Who am I related to?" "I can't disclose that without further testing," he said gently. "And not without a legal release." "This doesn't make sense," I whispered, shaking my head. "I look like my mother, I look like Vanessa." "Maybe," he said, "but biology sometimes tells a different story." My hands were shaking, not from the pain in my skin but from something colder, deeper. I felt unsteady, like the floor had shifted beneath me and no one else had noticed. "I'll schedule the test," I said quietly. "Let me know what I have to do." He nodded. "We'll draw it before you leave. Results take about a week." He stitched my hand in silence after that. I barely flinched when the needle went in. The lights buzzed overhead. The curtains shifted with every passing nurse. But in my head, all I could hear was one question on repeat. What if everything I knew about my family was a lie? What if Vanessa's cruelty wasn't just jealousy? What if I was never supposed to be part of her story at all? It had been 4 days since the hospital. 4 days of waking up with my heart in my throat and checking my email like it held the key to who I was. I hadn't told anyone about the doctor's words. Not Jonah, not Lacey, and definitely not my parents. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, just curious, did you forget to mention I was adopted?" No, I needed facts first. Proof. So when the unknown number lit up my phone on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, I hesitated before answering. "This is Melissa," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Ms. Harrow, good afternoon. My name is Oliver Hartman. I'm an estate attorney here in Austin." My stomach tightened. "Okay, I understand this may be unexpected," he continued, his tone professional but oddly warm, "but I'd like to meet with you in person regarding a matter of inheritance. Would you be available tomorrow morning?" I blinked. "Inheritance?" "Yes," he said. "It concerns your biological father. He passed away 3 weeks ago. He left you a sealed document and a personal letter. I can't disclose the contents over the phone, but I assure you this is legitimate." My voice dropped to a whisper. "You said biological father." "Yes, ma'am," he said gently. "I understand that may come as a shock, but you were named specifically. In writing, this was important to him." A million thoughts raced through my head. This had to be connected to the blood work. Somehow this man, this stranger, was the reason my blood told a different story. "I can come in tomorrow," I said. 10 a.m., he replied. "Bring your ID. My office is in the Westlake building downtown. Suite 214. The line went dead before I could ask his name again. The next morning, the lobby of the Westlake building was calm, filled with sunlight and the quiet click of designer heels on marble floors. Mr. Hartman's office was at the end of a hallway lined with framed law degrees and photos of him shaking hands with people I didn't recognize. He was in his early 60s, with perfectly parted silver hair and a dark navy suit that looked as crisp as his voice. "Ms. Harrow," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you for coming." I sat across from him, my palms sweating lightly. "I don't know what you've been told," he began, "but the man who named you in this document was named Stephen Allerton. He was a private investor, real estate developer, and based on what he told me before he died, your biological father." I stared at him. "That name means nothing to me." Mr. Hartman nodded, sliding a sealed envelope across the desk. "I know this is difficult, but before he passed, Mr. Allerton was adamant that you receive this personally. No third parties." My hands trembled slightly as I peeled open the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten letter and a formal last will and testament. I read the letter first. "Melissa, I've watched you from afar for a long time. Not by choice. I made mistakes, but not all of them were mine. I don't know what your parents told you or what they didn't. But you are my daughter, you always were. I knew I didn't have much time and I regret not meeting you properly. I hope this makes up for part of it. There are things you need to know. Things I believe were done to me not by accident. I trusted the wrong people once. I won't do it again, not even from the grave. Use what I left you wisely. And don't trust the smiles that hide knives." Steve and I stared at the paper until the words blurred. Mr. Hartman waited patiently. "The will," he said, "leaves you the majority of Mr. Allerton's estate. Liquid assets, stocks, 2 properties, one in Austin, one in Fredericksburg. Estimated combined value about $8 million. I didn't breathe, I couldn't. He was aware you might be unaware of your true parentage," Hartman added gently. "He hired a private investigator last year. Found your records. Confirmed through non-invasive testing. So, he knew about me." "Very much so," Hartman said. "He also believed he was being watched. He suspected someone in his business or family circle was trying to remove him from power. His death was officially ruled a heart attack. But you don't think it was?" "I think he didn't, and that matters." I felt like I was sinking slowly into some alternate version of my life. One where I had a father who wasn't the man I'd called dad for 32 years, one who had enemies, one who believed I was his only chance at justice. I folded the letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. What happens now? I asked, my voice quiet. That depends, Hartman replied, on how far you're willing to go for the truth. The air in Mr. Hartman's office seemed to shift after he spoke those words. He hoped you would. Not you could, not you might. He hoped I would. As if the man who had never even stood in front of me was still asking for something. I looked down at my hand, where the stitches from the cabinet cut were still healing, and felt the weight of something invisible pressing onto my shoulders. You said he thought someone was planning something, I said slowly, watching Hartman's expression. You mean Eric, my sister's husband? He nodded, folding his hands over the desk. Stephen never named names in the legal paperwork. But he told me off-record that there were connections between his recent financial discrepancies and a firm run by one Eric Caldwell. That name meant nothing to me at the time. But now, sitting across from you, well, the threads are tightening. I swallowed hard. He knew who I was, he knew about Vanessa and Eric. He did, Hartman said gently. He asked me not to contact you unless something happened to him. When the hospital called me, I knew it was time. I leaned forward, my voice barely above a whisper. So, are you saying my entire life, my parents, my sister, they all knew I wasn't theirs? Hartman took a slow breath. We can't be sure what your adoptive parents were told, but based on the Pies report, Stephen believed there was an arrangement made. A quiet adoption, possibly even a family favor. He was given the impression that your mother was a friend of a relative, that they'd agreed to raise you, and in return, they'd be financially supported, quietly. I felt the floor tilt. And they never told me, I murmured. They never said a word, not once. I imagine they had their reasons, he said, though the neutrality in his voice couldn't hide his disapproval. But your father, Stephen, believed you had a right to the truth, that you would have the integrity and clarity to see things through, even when others couldn't. My mind was racing. Childhood memories replaying now with a strange, unfamiliar echo. The way Vanessa always insisted she was the real daughter. My mother's off-handed remarks about how I never quite fit in. The sharpness in her tone whenever I questioned Eric, all of it suddenly had shape. And if Eric's involved, I said slowly, and Vanessa's married to him, Hartman nodded again, then your sister may be closer to this than you realize. I stood suddenly, the room too small, too full of secrets I hadn't asked to hold. I walked to the window and stared out at the city skyline, so familiar, and yet in that moment it looked like it belonged to someone else. What am I supposed to do? I whispered. I don't even know where to begin. Hartman rose and joined me, his voice low and deliberate. You begin with the truth, one piece at a time. Your father didn't leave you an impossible task. He left you a trail, a path, you just have to follow it. I turned to look at him, eyes brimming. And what if I'm not strong enough? He smiled faintly. He didn't choose you because you were perfect, Melissa. He chose you because you're brave. You walked out of a company where you were humiliated and you didn't shatter. You found new ground. That's more than most people ever do. I nodded slowly. Maybe I wasn't ready to burn everything down, but I was ready to stop pretending I didn't smell the smoke. Hartman handed me a second envelope, thinner than the last. Start with this, he said. It's a list of names and companies your father was investigating before he died. I've highlighted the one connected to Eric. I took it, the paper heavier than it should have been. One more thing, Hartman added. Stephen wrote that if you ever needed help, I was to be available. No charge, no questions asked. I looked up at him, startled. He believed in second chances, he said. For both of you. I didn't tell them I was coming. I just showed up at the front door of my childhood home on Sunday evening, carrying a bottle of wine and a practiced smile. The one I used to wear during holidays when the tension at the dinner table could be cut with a butter knife. Mom answered the door, surprised but not entirely displeased. Melissa, she said, her lips tightening into a strange version of affection. We thought you were busy, I smiled. Thought I'd join you for dinner. Well, she said with a laugh that didn't touch her eyes, hope you're hungry. Vanessa brought that spinach artichoke dip you love. Vanessa's voice floated in from the kitchen. Look who finally decided to stop being a stranger. And there she was, my sister, wearing a pale blue dress and that signature smirk like nothing had ever happened. Eric stood beside her, stirring pasta sauce like he was part of the family, like he hadn't ended my career in front of an entire office like it was sport. Melissa, he said, cool and cordial. Good to see you. Still at that little tech place. I smiled with the kind of ease that comes from rage carefully folded into politeness. Still there, they actually treat people like people, refreshing, right? Vanessa poured wine into 3 glasses, deliberately skipping mine. Still prefer white. I took a seat at the table and accepted the red with a shrug. Red's growing on me. Dinner passed like any other family meal. At least on the surface. My parents laughed a little too loudly at Eric's story about a client mix-up. Vanessa slipped easily into her role as golden child, recounting her latest Pilates obsession and plans for a Napa Valley getaway. My mother beamed. My father nodded approvingly. I sat and listened. And underneath the surface of my skin something burned slow and steady. They didn't know, not yet, not about Stephen, not about the will, not about the blood work or the envelope of names in my purse, but I needed more, proof, evidence. A trail they couldn't explain away with charm or manipulation. So I waited for the moment. Midway through dessert store-bought tiramisu, naturally, I stood from the table, pushing my chair back with a quiet scrape. "Excuse me," I said. "Restroom." No one questioned it. I walked down the hallway, the house exactly as I remembered it. Framed pictures slightly crooked, light switch still sticky from years of use. I passed my old room, the door still shut, untouched, and kept going until I reached Vanessa's. The doorknob turned easily. Inside, the air smelled like jasmine and expensive skincare. The vanity lights were off, but moonlight from the window cast enough glow for me to move quickly. Her laptop sat open on the desk. I slid into the chair, pulled the flash drive from my pocket, and inserted it with a soft click. It had taken Lacey and one of our developers 2 days to code the program. Simple, undetectable, and fast. It would clone the laptop's hard drive and transfer everything to a secure cloud account in my name. Emails, files, hidden folders. Whatever secrets Vanessa and Eric had, I was about to see them for myself. The screen flickered briefly, then returned to normal. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding," I whispered. I waited 60 seconds, just enough time for the program to activate. Then I pulled the drive, wiped the keyboard with my sleeve, and stood. When I returned to the table, no one had noticed my absence. Vanessa was mid-story about a wine tasting gone wrong in Sonoma. Eric laughed at the punchline, shaking his head like a man entirely in control. I sat down, smiled, sipped my wine, and promised myself that the next time I walked into this house I wouldn't be the one pretending anymore. At first I thought the virus hadn't worked. 3 days passed. No email pings, no cloud alerts, no mysterious folders appearing in my secure drive. I told myself to be patient. These things took time. Besides, Vanessa and Eric were too arrogant to suspect anything. They thought they'd won, but then came Friday morning. I opened my laptop at work, same as always, coffee in one hand, morning checklist in the other. The screen blinked once, then again, then access denied. Contact administrator. Confused, I tried my password again. Nothing, then a black screen, then a white one. My phone buzzed a second later. Lacey text, "Hey, it just flagged your account, something weird with your credentials. They're escalating." I stood frozen. This wasn't a glitch. It was a breach alert. I grabbed my phone and bag, muttering something to Jonah about bad Wi-Fi, and walked straight out the front door. By the time I reached the sidewalk, I was nearly sprinting. I didn't stop until I reached the cafe on 7th. It was mostly empty, dimly lit, with the low hum of espresso machines and soft jazz overhead. I tucked myself into the back booth and dialed Mr. Hartman's private line. He picked up on the second ring. "It's Melissa," I said. "Something's wrong." His voice dropped immediately. "What happened?" "My work laptop locked me out. It flagged my email. They said there was unusual activity connected to my credentials." He was silent for a beat, then, "They're on to you." My throat tightened. "You mean Eric?" "Yes," he said grimly. "And if he's monitoring your digital footprint, he may already suspect you accessed something. He's not just careful, Melissa. He's deliberate, calculated. He doesn't leave trails, but he erases other people's." I looked out the cafe window, my breath fogging the glass. "What should I do?" "Lay low," he said. "Don't try to access anything else from your usual devices. Use only encrypted channels from now on, and back up everything. If you have a copy of what you downloaded, secure it. If not, pray it got through before he realized." I swallowed hard. Could he really destroy the evidence? Yes, and if he thinks you're a threat, he won't just erase files. He'll erase your credibility. The weight of it hit me fully then. This wasn't just about getting justice. It was about staying one step ahead of a man who had buried secrets deeper than I'd imagined and was ruthless enough to keep them that way. I ended the call and sat there in the corner booth, heart racing, laptop untouched, watching the door with every breath. And for the first time, I wasn't just angry. I was afraid. The alert came in at 2:16 a.m. I was curled up on the couch in my apartment, trying to sleep with the TV on low, a blanket tucked around me like armor. My laptop sat on the coffee table, open but forgot. I'd already accepted the possibility that the virus had failed or worse, had been intercepted. But then I heard the chime. One soft ding. A new folder blinked into view, V-Archive 2022 Secure. I sat up so fast the blanket fell to the floor. Fingers trembling, I clicked the folder open. It took a minute to decrypt, every second feeling like someone might knock on the door, smash through my firewall, erase everything before I could even breathe. Then it opened. Dozens of files. Spreadsheets, personal documents, contracts, emails. Lots of emails, all carefully backed up from Vanessa's laptop. I scanned the subject lines, my eyes catching on one almost immediately. Ray, Friday, timing confirmed. Brake calibration done. Nothing traceable. I clicked, it was a forwarded message, from Eric to someone listed only as the body was short. Chilling. All set, control unit disabled. He won't know until it's too late. No cameras near the exit road. Brakes will hold long enough to keep suspicion off us. Once it's done we move fast, you know the drill. I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. Stephen's crash. He died driving back from his property outside Fredericksburg. The hospital had listed it as a sudden cardiac arrest, but what if it wasn't? What if his brakes had failed exactly the way Eric described? I scrolled further. More emails, mentions of account transfers. Vanessa copied on cryptic updates. A chain titled Post-Execution Asset Pathing with a spreadsheet listing shell corporations, some of which matched the names on Hartman's list. I wasn't just holding proof of betrayal. I was holding evidence of something much, much darker. My hand shook as I hit print on the most critical documents. The printer on my desk sputtered quietly to life, spitting out pages that might hold the key to everything. When it was done, I placed the warm stack into a folder, sealed it, and stood. The apartment was silent. Outside, the parking lot shimmered under weak yellow lights, the hum of street lamps the only sound in the stillness. I stepped into the cold air, gripping the folder tight, walked to my car, opened the door slowly. And as I sat behind the wheel, the world tilted. I whispered it before I could stop myself. Dad, I'll finish what you started. I didn't care what Eric had done to cover his tracks. I didn't care how many people he had fooled. I wasn't scared anymore. Because now I had the truth, and I knew exactly who to give it to. The courthouse smelled like old wood and colder justice. I stood in the hallway outside courtroom 6B, gripping the manila folder like it held the pieces of my entire life, because it did. Inside was the letter from Stephen, the will, and the emails I'd printed just days before. Evidence of betrayal, of sabotage, of murder. The clerk called my name. I stepped inside. The room was smaller than I imagined. Rows of worn pew-like benches. A few scattered reporters. And at the front, a raised bench where the judge sat, adjusting his glasses as the case number echoed through the speakers. And there, on the defense table, sat Eric. He wore a dark suit and his usual mask of control, but his eyes found me instantly. Cold, alert, calculating. Vanessa sat beside him, her blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, the color drained from her face. She hadn't spoken to me since the subpoena. Not that I needed her to. This was never about her words. This was about the truth. I took the stand, my heels clicking softly across the floor. The bailiff swore me in and I placed my hand over the truth and promised to tell nothing but it. My mouth was dry, my hands clammy, but when I sat and looked out across that courtroom, something steadied inside me. Ms. Harrow, the prosecutor began, can you tell the court how you came to know the late Mr. Stephen Allerton? I nodded slowly. I didn't know him, at least, not until after his death. I believed my parents were my biological family. I only discovered the truth after a blood test revealed inconsistencies, and a lawyer contacted me with a letter and will left by Mr. Allerton. You are his biological daughter? Yes. And what did his letter say? That he suspected someone close to him was planning to harm him, that he didn't believe his death would be an accident. The prosecutor handed me the letter, marked as Exhibit C. I unfolded it with care, reading a portion aloud. He wrote, "I trusted the wrong people once. I won't do it again, not even from the grave." Gasps rippled through the back of the room. I saw Vanessa flinch. The attorney moved to the next document. "Can you tell us what you discovered on Ms. Caldwell's personal device?" I held up the printed email. "This," I said, my voice catching slightly, "was an email between Eric Caldwell and a contact identified only as MM. It outlined the disabling of a brake system. It said he won't know until it's too late." Eric shifted in his seat. Vanessa stared straight ahead, stone-faced. "And did this message correspond to the timing of Mr. Allerton's fatal accident?" "Yes, down to the day." The prosecutor turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we are prepared to submit corroborating documents detailing transfers to offshore accounts, falsified medical records, and a connection between the defendant's business and shell corporations used to reroute Mr. Allerton's assets following his death." Eric stood suddenly. "Your Honor, this is character assassination. There is no forensic." "Mr. Caldwell," the judge warned sharply, "you'll have your turn." I looked at Eric. For the first time, I didn't see a CEO. I didn't see power. I saw fear, real, uncontrolled. Vanessa finally turned toward me, her voice barely audible. "You don't understand what you're doing." I stared back at her. "No, Vanessa, I understand exactly what I'm doing." The judge struck the gavel once, silencing the room. His eyes scanned the stack of evidence. "These allegations," he said slowly, "are serious. Given the volume of supporting material and testimony, I am ordering an immediate investigation and freezing of all Caldwell-related assets. Court will reconvene for formal charges to be considered." Eric paled. Vanessa burst into tears, covering her face, and I sat still. My hands no longer trembled, because justice, like truth, was finally being heard. The final hearing came just 2 weeks later. Everything moved fast after the initial testimony, too fast for Eric to wrangle his lawyers into the polished army he was used to. The state pressed charges. The assets were frozen. And the courtroom transformed from a place of questions to a theater of consequences. The air that morning was tight. A thick, silent kind of tension that clung to the wood-paneled walls like fog. I sat in the front row beside Mr. Hartman, dressed in black, not for mourning but for clarity. I didn't need color today. I needed presence. Focus. The courtroom buzzed with quiet conversations as the judge entered and everyone rose. We all sat again, and the judge wasted no time. "In the matter of Allerton v. Caldwell," he began, "this court has reviewed extensive financial evidence, communication records, and sworn testimony. Based on the presented facts, it is the ruling of this court that Stephen Allerton's death is no longer presumed accidental. A formal investigation into possible foul play is warranted." I closed my eyes for just a second, just long enough to feel the tremor of validation deep in my ribs. "Additionally," the judge continued, "the will presented by Mr. Hartman is confirmed as legally binding. All named assets are to be transferred immediately to the sole heir, Melissa Harrow. Any claim by the Caldwell estate is hereby revoked." Eric didn't flinch. Not at first, but the muscles in his jaw tightened. A single vein in his temple pulsed as the gavel came down. Beside him, Vanessa's calm cracked open like glass under pressure. "You ruined everything." She screamed, standing so fast her chair toppled. "This was mine, all of it. He was a sick old man. You don't get to walk in and steal what we built." The bailiff stepped toward her, but the judge held up his hand. "Ms. Caldwell," he said sharply, "you are in contempt. Sit down." She collapsed into her chair, hands shaking, mascara already beginning to smear. And then Eric stood, not with the ease and command he once had, but slowly, like a man realizing the last floor beneath him had finally crumbled. As the court officers approached, he didn't argue, didn't beg. He simply turned to me and said flatly, "You don't understand the game you've just started." I met his gaze. "And you don't understand what happens when you finally stop playing." He was handcuffed without ceremony. The metal clicked. The gallery murmured. And for the first time since this began, I felt the weight of every step I had taken to get here, every silent cry, every night I doubted, every lie they told me dressed as love. Mr. Hartman placed a hand gently on my shoulder as Eric was led out. "He underestimated you." "No," I whispered, eyes welling. "They all did." Across the courtroom, Vanessa refused to look at me. Her arms were crossed, her jaw trembling. She had always been so good at hiding behind a smile. Now she didn't have one. And I didn't need revenge anymore. Justice had done the work for me. The judge rose. Court is adjourned. I stood slowly, hands at my sides, the courtroom noise fading into a dull hum around me. I didn't cry from rage. I didn't cry from grief. But I let the tears fall anyway. Because in that moment, with everything they'd buried finally unearthed, I felt something I hadn't in months. Whole. It was the first time I'd stood behind a podium since the trial. The press gathered in a modest event space just off South Congress, with folding chairs, a rented mic, and a simple banner behind me, the Allerton Initiative Restoring Futures. I hadn't wanted anything flashy, no gold letter signs, no veiled stabs at the people who once tried to erase me. The mission was clear: fund education and mentorship programs for young women in underserved communities, just like Stephen had once hoped for. He never got to do it himself. But I could. And I would. I glanced down at the note cards in my hands but didn't use them. I looked out at the crowd instead, journalists, local officials, a few cautious benefactors, and began. When I first learned who my biological father was, I said, I thought the story would end there with a name, a face, and maybe a few zeros in a bank account. I didn't expect anything more. A murmur swept through the front row. They'd all read the headlines. Heiress wins estate amid scandal. CEO arrested in will dispute. They knew pieces of the truth, the scandalous parts, but they didn't know me. What I discovered instead, I continued, was a legacy buried beneath years of manipulation, silence, and greed. I had to fight not just for the truth, but for the right to even claim it, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Someone in the back raised a camera. I paused and let the click settle before I added, this isn't about revenge. It never really was. It's about restoring what should have never been taken: my name, my future, my voice. I stepped down to light applause, my heart steady. Outside, reporters rushed to get their blurbs online. A few interns offered congratulations. Jonah sent flowers, yellow tulips with a card that read, still rooting for you. Always. But the person I hadn't expected to see was standing just beyond the hedge near the valet, my mother. And beside her, my father. They looked older, diminished. My mother's pearls were gone. My father's usual air of confidence had deflated into something quieter, uncertain. They weren't holding hands. They didn't step forward, they just watched. I walked toward them slowly. Melissa, my mother said, her voice was strained, eyes flicking to the cameras. This whole press thing, it's a bit much, don't you think? I smiled just a little. Feels appropriate, given how quiet everyone was when it mattered. My father shifted. We didn't know how to say something. We weren't sure if it was true. It was true, I said simply. And you knew it, maybe not at first, but somewhere along the way you knew. My mother's lips parted like she might deny it, but nothing came out. I didn't need an apology, not anymore. Their silence had spoken loud enough for a lifetime. I'm not angry, I said, surprising even myself. I just don't need your permission to exist anymore. They both blinked. And I turned to leave. I didn't look back. Vanessa hadn't come. I wasn't surprised. Word was she'd moved back in with our parents. The house where she once ruled every hallway now held only quiet rooms and unopened bills. Most of the cars were gone, the wine fridge empty. The future she built with Eric had crumbled like the false tower it always was. She was living in my old bedroom. That irony didn't escape me. I thought for a moment about calling her, about asking why she did it, why she hated me enough to destroy everything. But some answers weren't owed. And some wounds didn't deserve my voice. So I went home, not to my apartment, not to the office, to the Allerton estate, my estate now. I unlocked the front door, stepped into the sunlit foyer, and whispered, "You were right, Dad." And for the first time since I'd read his letter, I knew he heard me. The cemetery was quiet that morning, too quiet for a city like Austin. Just past the wrought iron gate, sunlight spilled through the oaks, dappling the stone paths in warmth. A few robins flitted between headstones. In the distance, wind chimes rang softly from a memorial tree. I parked my car along the outer lane, stepped out, and walked the path I already knew by heart. Row G. Stone 28. Stephen Allerton, loving father, tireless believer in truth. The marble was clean. I'd made sure of that. The new engraving had been completed last week, just in time for this moment. I knelt down slowly, smoothing the hem of my coat, and placed the lilies across the base, fresh, white, full of quiet reverence. I thought I'd be angrier, I whispered, brushing a speck of dust from the corner of his name. At you, at the years we lost, but I'm not. I let the silence answer me. The breeze picked up, tugging softly at my scarf, carrying the scent of flowers and fall into the air. I could hear distant footsteps, someone else visiting someone they'd loved. But for a while, it felt like the world had slowed just for me. You were right, I said, softer now, about all of it. I looked down at my hands, no longer shaking, no longer unsure, just still. I followed the truth, I continued. I found what they tried to bury, Eric's behind bars, Vanessa's, well, she's finally living without masks. And Mom and Dad, I exhaled slowly. They may never say the words out loud, but I think they know what they lost. Not the money, not the estate, me. The lilies rustled in the wind. I felt no urge to cry, no weight dragging me down, just a quiet peace like something inside had finally unclenched after holding its breath for too long. I'm building the foundation, I said. In your name, the Allerton Initiative. It's already helping women, ones who never had a chance, like I almost didn't. I smiled then, really smiled. You gave me more than a name, you gave me something to become. For a while I sat there, letting the stillness wrap around me like a gentle hand. And when I finally stood, I felt lighter. Not because I'd forgot, but because I'd finally made peace with remembering. The past no longer defined me. It had shaped me, yes, bruised me, tested me, but it didn't own me. And as I turned and walked back toward the car, the wind lifted behind me, soft and strong, like a hand on my back. Like maybe, just maybe, he was walking with me.